I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern14.com, here to go over SEC Power Rankings for Week 9. Georgia took the week off and remains number one. No surprise, the Bulldogs, just about everybody's number one team in the country. And Alabama now moving up in the polls. They stay at number 2 in our rankings this week. Alabama, a pretty thorough win over Tennessee. Bryce Young looked great. Any questions that we might have had against Alabama coming out of the A&M game, starting to be answered a little bit. I'm not sure the defense is as great as Alabama wants it to be, but it's certainly good enough. And Alabama with a very impressive win over a Tennessee team that had been playing well. Ole Miss at 3 and Kentucky at 4. I'm keeping those teams there. I really like what Ole Miss is doing in the running game in terms of being able to find options outside of Matt Corral. The running backs on that team have been doing a really good job, and the run defense was really good for Ole Miss this weekend, holding a red-hot rushing team with LSU down to a very paltry total this week. And so I like what Ole Miss is doing in the run game on offense and defense. And Kentucky, statistically, the Wildcats aren't a great team. The computers see it. Some of them have them outside the top 30. And you've got some things that are bothersome. The -8 turnover margin, and you look at total offense, Kentucky under 400 yards a game, just not a statistically dominant team. But look, Kentucky has taken care of business and even played Georgia pretty respectably. So I think right now the Cats at 4, that's where I've got them. I have a hard time moving them off of that. Moving on, I've got A&M at 5. I know the Aggies are ahead of Arkansas in my rankings. That might bother some people. But look, if you're going to go off this team beat that team, when you get this late in the season in power rankings, it becomes a little problematic because your rankings kind of become chaos. Right now, I think A&M is just a better football team. You're seeing them gel on the offensive line and at quarterback play. The defense has always been solid all year. So I think right now, A&M at 5, to me, that's a really talented team that could move up, and I have a hard time moving A&M lower than that right now. I've got them followed by Auburn and Arkansas. Auburn, I really don't know what to think of. It's not beating a team in the current top 25, but statistically they're pretty good. Even with that, though, a lot of that's come in beating up against bad teams. Arkansas 7th. I think the Razorbacks probably overachieved a little bit earlier in the year. I think that's a really good team, though. The schedule's going to get easier for them, so they've got an opportunity to pick up some wins. The Arkansas Pine Bluff game, kind of a non-starter. They were up 45-0 at the half, so I don't really take anything from that one, but I think Arkansas is a solid 7. Now, it gets interesting with Florida at 8 because we've got Florida at 8 in this league. The Gators actually are 5th in SP Plus and 7th in ESPN's FPI. Now, where that comes from, Florida has dominated some bad teams, and it statistically won in the Alabama game and also in the Kentucky game where it outgained both teams. And I think the computers take that into consideration. But the bottom line is the Gators didn't win those games, and winning and losing has to matter. Rankings sometimes are predictive, and so this is suggesting that maybe Florida is better than a lot of people think. But boy, last time out, that defense gave up 49 points, so we've got some questions about that. I've got Tennessee 9, LSU 10. You could argue they should be flipped, and maybe that's the right call. State looked really good against Vanderbilt this weekend. Tennessee didn't look so great at the end of the game when it ran out of gas against Alabama. I think that's more about Alabama than Tennessee. Look, here's what I went with the Vols, and I know they've played an easier schedule than has MSU. Tennessee is plus almost 11 points in scoring margin, and Mississippi State is plus about 2 points. That's a big difference. Again, schedule accounts for some of that, but I just look on paper. Tennessee seems to statistically be the better team. Of course, it got pounded in losses to Florida and Alabama. Florida when it was playing well, and then that's hurt the Vols. But gut feeling tells me Tennessee's a better team right now with Hendon Hooker. I guess we won't know because the teams won't play. That could change, but right now, that's why I've got Tennessee ahead of State. LSU at 11. The Tigers, I just don't know that this season's going anywhere, although we say that. It beat Florida a couple of weeks ago. The Ole Miss performance just wasn't a good one. Injuries are knocking out elite players. I just don't see LSU going a lot higher than this. And right now it's minus 27 in yardage per game, getting outgained. So I think that tells you a lot about how a team is, and that does not speak well of LSU. I've got South Carolina and Missouri next in that order. Flip a coin. I went with Carolina just because it's got a better defense. Not sure that's the right call. They'll play in a couple weeks. Frankly, neither playing very well right now. Missouri, though, probably the worst defense in the Power 5, and that's why I settled with Carolina a spot ahead of Missouri. Finally, Vandy. Goodness, we've got a big gap between Vanderbilt and the bottom of the league. The Commodores are minus 2.25 yards per play, getting beat by 22 points on average. I just think that tells you the story. That's a bad team, that it's going to be a while before Clark Lee gets that turned around. Anyway, I'm Chris Lee for the 14. Thanks for watching today. We'll have more videos coming later this week.